Adriel, I think we covered pretty well what an SDR or BDR is, but let's say I'm a hiring manager and
hmm
I want to go about hiring an SDR. First step would be knowing when that's the right choice, right? So how do you know when you should be hiring an SDR or a BDR?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's two possibilities there. One is that you're adding one to a team, and then the other possibility is you're built. That's the first SDR, BDR you're hiring ever, and it's brand new. So for the brand new people, typically the sales or marketing director just isn't getting enough leads. Their leads aren't coming in fast enough, or maybe like the one to many relationship that marketing typically does isn't pulling up enough leads in, or they just want to accelerate. They just want more. They
Mm,
want to accelerate that revenue
right.
faster, and they have potentially maybe a list of ideal customers that they would like to approach. And an SDR team is fantastic for that because they can do that one-to-one relationship just fast. They can do that at scale, right? Whereas marketing is more just one to many blast emails and ads and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So what you're telling me is that needing more friends isn't the right reason to hire an SDR.
No, that's not the right way to add to the team.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you've got a list of contacts, let's say of prospects, maybe 100 or so, and you want to have that one-to-one relationship. What's the first step to getting that done with an SDR?
I think, well, it's good to think about how you would do it. If you had all the time in the world, what would you do? What would you do to like let pick one of those companies? Okay, I want Acme. What do I got to do to get Acme? What are the things I'd want to do? Okay, well, I'd probably want to call some decision makers over there. And if I can't get them on the phone, I'll probably want to reach out via email. And maybe a little bit after that, I'd probably want to reach out on LinkedIn. And I'd probably want to use this kind of content. So you kind of think of like a sequence, I guess, that your
Mm,
SDR or BDR will go through. And I think it's important to think about that because sometimes you might be able to solve that with marketing. You might be able to, oh, we just need to do this. Okay, but we can do that with just a broad-based email or a broad-based Facebook ad campaign or something like that. But more regularly, you're going to run into a situation where you need to actually put people on the problem and scale them up. So I think those are some important steps to go through because it's obvious, but you do have to put some time and thought into it, and then you do have
mm.
to optimize it afterwards because your initial thoughts on what might work may not, and then you might have to just switch gears very quickly. So I guess that's a little bit on when you'd need to start looking and what you'd want to do. Definitely the kinds of person that you're looking to hire. I think that's very interesting, and there's a couple things we could talk about there. Well, what kind of a person do you think would be ideal for an SDR or BDR?
Yeah, so I think once you've defined the problem as you've just done, then you need to define the solution and an ideal SDR, BDR, right? It's going to be someone who's driven, self-motivated, able to work independently, but also understand moving parts and kind of think on their feet. Um, does that track with you?
Yeah, and so some SDRs would be great to like just take a sequence and just work it over, just like
Mm,
pound the phones, get the emails out, do the LinkedIn requests, do the social stuff, and then some other SDRs will be also great at optimizing the process, and especially early on. You definitely want someone who'd be able to optimize that process for you going forward because your initial thought on what might work as a pitch might fall flat on its face. And then they have to change the pitch, or they have to change the approach, or they have to change the target company that they're targeting. Like any of these things, if the person's just like a checklist doer,
hmm.
they won't be able to help with that. They'll just keep failing at the thing that won't work, and they won't optimize or switch gears
Hmm.
to something else that's better.
And ideally, using a sales automation platform, you would be able to automate some of that checklist to the point that just having someone who can check off the checklist is going to be made redundant, right? Eventually, and you need someone who's going to tweak that cadence.
Yeah, exactly. Just like marketing, cold calling and cold contacting through an SDR or BDR is a numbers game. So you need to be quality, but you also need to hit numbers to
Mhm.
realistically make it work. And if you're going to be calling 50 or 100 people a day, you do need that sales automation platform in place to manage the cadence or the sequence, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
and to make sure that it happens consistently. Because when you lose consistency and you start going off the cuff, that's where things get weird and it doesn't work as well and things start falling through the cracks. Like in order to hit those big volume, you have to follow the same sequence all the time and then just hammer it and put your nose to the grindstone, I guess, on it.
Mm-hmm. Right, and if you're able to properly articulate that sequence, so much of the repeat work is going to be handled already. So you're not going to have to worry about things falling through the cracks.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, so that's a little bit of the process and the stuff that you need to think about in terms of infrastructure and that kind of thing for your SDR. The other thing to think about is goals, right? Setting the appropriate goals, because when people are looking at hiring an SDR, they typically like, okay, they need leads. How many leads do you need? Because this varies depending on industry and whatnot, but typically like an SDR is going to book between 10 to 30 demos or meetings a month for like a SaaS company kind of a thing, right? So is that enough? Is that too much? Do you need a whole team of SDRs to meet what your lead goals are? I think like a good sales manager or marketing or sales manager would be able to do the calculations later on in that sales cycle and figure out how many inputs they need to get the output they need in terms of revenue and business growth and that kind of thing. So if you start with those business goals in mind, you're going to be more likely to achieve them when you build the team out.
Right, and the ratio of leads or high quality leads in to leads being handled by account executives probably speaks to the difference between, what an SDR is doing and what an account executive can be expected to do.
Yeah, you definitely need to think about that, and I mean model it. Most good sales managers and business people will model out what their businesses need to do in order to scale. So at this size with this revenue, here's what we're going to do. If we need this amount of revenue, here's what we're going to do. If we need this amount of revenue, here's what we're going to do. And have some big, hairy, audacious goals in there, because sometimes, like especially with software and SaaS, like a lot of the times they get funded out, and then it's like, okay, your budget is now 10x, and we need 10x the customers, and you need to have a scalable method of doing that. And the fantastic thing with SDRs and BDRs is that it typically is scalable. You can determine which lists you're going to target and how many leads you get out, and then look to scale that team up.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in my own experience as an SDR working in SaaS, the kinds of methods and approaches that work with a team of 5 SDRs can in fact work with 50 or 100. There's some things that will change, but at some point it is very, very scalable. So we can grow in size or even decrease as needed, depending on the targets.
Yeah, and needing that backdrop of software in order to make it consistent and get consistent results out.
Absolutely.